Several Republican officials have suggested removing President Biden from their state's 2024 election ballot after Colorado and Maine moved to challenge Trump's candidacy for the GOP primary. Last month, the Colorado and Maine Supreme Courts both ruled that Trump's actions on January 6th violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The courts therefore decided that he should not appear on the state's Republican ballots. The 14th Amendment states that anyone who takes an oath to defend the Constitution and then engages in an insurrection or rebellion is not permitted to hold any office, civil or military, in the United States. Following Trump's removal from the state's two primary ballots, some Republicans are urging conservative-leaning states to remove Biden from their ballots. Statewide officials in 3 states have indicated that they are considering doing just this. Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft said Biden could be removed for allegations of insurrection. There's a really funny CNN interview in which Jay Ashcroft is saying that Biden should be removed because of allegations of insurrection. And they ask him, so what are these allegations? And he can't name them. He says, well, people have said their allegations. Pretty hilarious. Check out. Ron DeSantis was a little bit more specific. He said that this is just going to be a tit for tat, and it's not going to end well. By the way, imagine me saying this in the most whiny voice possible. But you could make a case, and we're actually looking into this in Florida right now, that a case could be made against Biden because of the invasion of 8 million immigrants. Is that correct? The answer is no. Like, you couldn't make that case, but whatever. It's Ron DeSantis. But this is a really interesting case, and John and I discussed this a couple of weeks ago, I think. So I'll just talk about like there's the legal issue, and then there's the practical issue, and then there's like the philosophical issue of removing a candidate from the ballot, based on actual written law. So, John, what do you think about this? Like, what do you think about first Colorado and Maine decide? I think Nevada might be looking at this too. I think they are as well, removing Trump because of the 14th Amendment and the Republicans' response to this. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
So I think that according to the letter of the law, they do have the power to do that. And by Republican logic, if you have the power to do something, then you should do it. Just let's reference ourselves back to the Supreme Court, where when the Republican Mitch McConnell basically said, "Oh yeah, I know that we said we're going to block Obama's nomination, but we have the power to decide to not do that now, and so we're going to not do that." When Trump nominated, who was the last one whoever the last one he nominated was,
Barrett.
but like, what was that?
Barrett, right?
Barrett, yeah, exactly, that was it. And like, yeah, from that perspective, you have Democrats do, by the legal letter of the law, have the ability to determine in the courts that Donald Trump acted in insurrection against the United States and therefore is ineligible for the ballot. That is just the letter of the law. And so the Law and Order Party getting mad about that, it's just hypocritical. It's good. Hypocritical. I actually kind of agree on the philosophical issue, but it is just darn hypocritical for that party to be complaining about this.
That's true. I hadn't thought about it that way. Well, I mean, the Republicans like to cite law and order all the time and everything, but you're right. It's like when the thing happened with Obama and Merrick Garland when he nominated, and the Senate said, we're just not going to hear it. Sorry, we're not going to do a confirmation. That actually was very weird to me. To this day, it's still odd because they could have held the hearing and then just rejected him. And I don't understand why they didn't hold the hearing at all, because then there would be no firepower. Because people would say, okay, well, you put him up for the vote, he lost the vote. That's fair. But instead, they're like, nope, we're just not going to hear him at all. And I don't know, but this ballot thing is interesting to me. One thing I found out while reading this is that I thought that the Colorado and Maine Supreme Courts ruled that Trump couldn't be on the general ballot, but that's not what happened. Like, it ruled that Trump can't be on the Republican primary ballot. And I was like, well, that doesn't matter. But while they don't specifically mention the general election ballot, like, looking into it, they say, well, if you don't qualify for the primary, you probably don't qualify for the general either. So he's gonna be removed. But hearing the Republicans talk about how Biden can be removed from the ballot now because of insurrection for illegal immigration is hilarious. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, so what's the insurrection here? Like, the insurrection Trump took part in, very clear, very obvious. They tried to overturn the election. But is the Republican argument somehow that letting in immigrants, documented or undocumented or otherwise, that years from now, when they get documentation, they vote, that's somehow an insurrection? It doesn't make any sense. I don't fucking understand it.
It doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to make sense. Like
True, true, good point.
if it was supposed to make sense, they wouldn't be able to make this argument because there's no part of this argument that makes sense. It's this is actually a great litmus test as to whether you're a conservative I can talk to or not. Because I can talk to conservatives, but if you're going to sit here and tell me, like, it's such a rooting for the laundry mentality of like, oh, well, if your team gets to do this, my team should just get to do this too. And like, that's really where the logic ends. Like, don't look any farther than that because there is none. That's all that they actually care about. Because yeah, letting it, like, Donald Trump also let tons of undocumented immigrants in this country. But that's disqualifying for Biden. It's also disqualifying for Trump. But that's not, they just want a thing. It doesn't matter what the thing is. It doesn't matter if they agree or disagree with the thing. They just want a thing to be even. They're like a little brother who doesn't like that you got to go on a sleepover with your friends because you're, I don't know, a teenager and they're four. You know, and like it's that's exactly what it is. But that's it. Like that from that perspective, there's not much more to discuss here because like it's simply just pure hypocrisy for the sake of getting even.
Yeah, it's all and this is why conservatives are referred to as reactionaries, because they don't really, I mean, they have principles, but when it comes to their actual performances and things they do, it's all like Ron DeSantis said. He said it himself. This is tit for tat. Okay, you're going to do this. Well, I'm going to try to do something similar, whether it makes sense or not. They do this a lot with language. With like, we talk about leftist language and how a lot of times it's unnecessarily academic, and conservatives will rail against not just the language, but the philosophy behind the language. And this happened. Like the best example of this is the Black Lives Matter movement. So Black Lives Matter comes out, and what do those conservatives respond with? All lives matter. And it's like, oh, okay, like, or Blue Lives Matter, just something to just respond to what the actual principal position is. And whenever someone comes up with like the whole all lives matter stuff, I always answer, okay, your position is that all lives matter. Tell me, like, what policies is the all lives matter group advocating for? What is it? Like, what lives are they trying to play? It's none. It's just a response against Black Lives Matter. And this happened again with, I don't know if you saw last week, Hunter Biden showed up at a congressional hearing. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure why he did that. It was a little funny, but I didn't really get what his I mean, I guess his point was he wanted to testify publicly.
Yes. The point there is, and that's a totally separate conversation, but that Republicans wanted to testify behind closed doors so that they could release excerpts out of context. And he's like, no, I'll do it publicly because they don't have the evidence.
Right.
And, yeah, go ahead.
and Nancy Mace saw that, or Congresswoman Nancy Mace saw that Hunter Biden was there, and she said, "You are the textbook example of white privilege." And it's like, okay, so do you believe in white privilege or not? Of course she doesn't, but she only uses it to weaponize against the left. And conservatives do this all the time because, like I said, there's no real ground to stand on. They just want to say, okay, well, Trump is off, so I guess we'll try to take Biden off. And it's, I don't know, it's a joke party, but okay. Do you think it was a good idea to remove Trump from the ballot? Like, obviously, letter of the law, he engaged in insurrection, obvious violation of the 14th Amendment, like, done. But do you think the after effects of this are going to be good? Not just for, this election, but for politics in the future? Like, do you see this working out, positively or not?
Yeah, that's the whole other question here. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to acknowledge that the thing that we're talking about, as much as you hit the nail on the head here, is like, this is such a reactionary thing. I see liberals do this all the time too, where they don't actually have a consistent philosophical position. They're just rooting for the laundry and want their team to win. And I actually think that this is a great example of it, because I don't philosophically agree with removing Trump from the ballot. Like I think that any institutional restriction on democracy is a bad thing. The closer we can get to the will of the people being heard, the better. If the will of the people is to elect an insurrectionist into office, well, that's not an insurrectionist. That's a fucking democratic win. you know, and to deny the will of the people in order to stop an insurrection seems very hypocritical to me. Like it just doesn't make fundamental sense to me. And I said this, and I got attacked by Democrats and liberals, because that's what they just saw someone going against their team, you know, and even if like they agreed with what I was saying, they'd go, oh well, stopping Trump is just so absolutely necessary that it's worth it. And it's like, no, I don't think that's the case, because Trump being on the ballot for the Republicans is the only chance of Biden staying president. Like if Nikki Haley becomes the Republican nominee, Biden's toast. It's over. He's going for a ride, and he's never seeking public office again, because he's going to lose, because Trump is the only person he can beat. So I really don't see taking Trump off the ballot as a strategically positive move in any world except for getting another Republican elected president. And I also don't think it actually has much of an impact, because Biden's going to win the states that are taking him off the ballot anyway. Now, what I didn't realize until you just said it just now is that I didn't realize this was for the primary ballot. That
Yeah,
could
that's the
actually have
ruling.
an
It's just
effect,
primary. Yeah.
because if you take him off the ballot in all of the blue states, well, suddenly another Republican can come through and win the primary. And that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that would effectively eliminate Donald Trump from the presidency. But again, I don't think that's a smart move for Democrats.
So on on the philosophical aspect of it, so like the amendment was written after the Civil War, so like Robert E. Lee couldn't run for president, and like that seems like a good idea to me. Like, I don't know, that just seems like a good idea, and so that. I don't know. I kind of, you're right though, because listen, if we say that, democracy is important, then if more people want this guy, then this guy should win. But also, national security and protecting, what we feel is important in society, then again, who is the we? Like if enough people don't want the Constitution, then the Constitution should go away. Yeah.
The thing is, for like a Robert E. Lee, it makes sense. That's a bad insurrectionist. But we've had good insurrectionists. Nelson Mandela.
Exactly.
Nelson
Yes.
Mandela was
Yeah.
a good insurrectionist. This
Yeah.
law would have applied to him if he was American, and he wouldn't have been able to be president. John Brown, we talk about a lot on this show. He was an insurrectionist. Should that have disqualified him from running for president? I mean, obviously the being killed thing ended up doing it, but the like this law would have stopped him, and that wouldn't have made sense to me. So I don't agree with, even if I agree that I agree Donald Trump shouldn't be president. He engaged in insurrection. Screw that guy. But like, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, you're right. It's a double-edged sword, which is a funny phrase to me, because like a double-edged sword is a double-edged sword. So, but it's just it's true that this applies to good insurrectionists and bad insurrectionists, and that could come back to bite you in the ass. Either way, I don't know. It is funny. It is just funny to see how this is played out. But you're right. I should have pointed this out, that liberals do this too. They do it all the time and they'll just like fall in line with something if it comports with what they want. So I don't know, it's pretty interesting. But if you guys got any other thoughts about this, put a comment, let us know what's going on here, and we'll hear from you again next time.